In the Supreme Court's history of 115 judges, 110 have been white men. So this is an enormous moment. Just the fact that she may be able to serve on the Supreme Court. Of course, she has to get through this week's confirmation hearings. But the fact that she is the first one to be nominated, and there were countless other Black women who were qualified before her. And so this is much more of an indictment on the American political system and institutions than it is to say that she isn't qualified. There are people that were qualified way before her, but they just never got the nomination.
So what do you make of the Republican line of questioning?
Some of this is to be expected and anticipated, particularly if we think about these hearings as more of political theater than actually trying to get to learn who the nominee is. What the Republicans and Democrats are trying to do are to push their own partisan agenda and try to see if this nominee will confirm or will kind of push back from partisan labels like liberal or conservative, or how would they think about an issue. I'm also recalling that November is an election year, right? So this is election year. November will be an election for midterms. And so these senators are also thinking about how their questioning is going to play into what news ads and kind of campaign ads, attack ads are going to be for the midterm elections. It's also important to note that there are most likely people that are in the Judiciary Committee serving right now who will run for president in 2024. So they're using this opportunity as a way to have a platform, to grandstand, to showcase their own partisan preferences and their political affiliations, more so than really interrogate Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson.
And of course, she has to sit through all of this. Another thing that she seems to be subjected to, particularly from Senator Lindsey Graham, is, he seems to be engaging in a weird sort of payback for the treatment, or in his view, I imagine he thinks the mistreatment that Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett got. He has repeatedly posed questions to Ketanji Brown Jackson that Democrats posed, or he says posed, to Amy Coney Barrett and Brett Kavanaugh. Of course, these are completely different people.
Yeah, so the context is different. The people are different. The players are different. So this really is a case of whataboutism that has nothing to do with Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. It has more so to do with Lindsey Graham himself, right? So whatever unresolved issues that he has, that's been on full display here. The other thing to note that has come up in Lindsey Graham's opening statement, that he feels that he's been wronged by the Biden administration, that his choice, the South Carolinian Michelle Childs, was not selected to be the nominee. And he feels, and he said this as such, right, that there was dark money, liberals on the far left wanted to sink his choice and put up Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. And he said that during the opening statement, he was going to ask her about some of these things. Now, both of these are connected because these are these vendettas that Lindsey Graham has brought up. They have nothing to do with Judge Jackson. Nothing at all. And it is ludicrous to think that she would use their time to respond to them, because simply she can't, right? These things don't have anything to do with her. These are all things that Lindsey Graham is using his platform to litigate, nothing to do with her.
As important as it is going to be symbolically in the long term and in the sort of broader framework, we're still looking at a court trying to preserve the status quo, then even the scales on the court.
Yeah, you're exactly right. If Judge Brown Jackson is confirmed, she will be maintaining the status quo that's on the current court. There would be 3 justices that are appointed by Democratic presidents, and the other 6 are appointed by a Republican president. We don't anticipate much to change. However, right, the point that matters the most is that her voice will be in the room. And she has shown in her previous appointments that she was able to change the tenor and the quality of the conversation, that perhaps persuaded some of her colleagues to think differently about the issues that they were discussing. So I assume that we'll see this on the Supreme Court, right? It matters the voices that are in the room, and that she's able to persuade her colleagues to think about something differently in ways that they just didn't think of because they didn't have a perspective of a Black woman public defender, a Black woman that grew up in the South, right? They just haven't had that in the room before. So I think that will be the qualitative difference. And I'll also note that her dissent opinions that she writes, and we've seen this on the hearing so far, right, that she's been praised for her thorough and detailed writing, I'm sure will come through, which will serve as precedent for other cases, even if she's not in the majority at this point.
There were hundreds of largely women, largely Black women outside the court this week during the hearing that
Yeah, I was
were.
one of them.
Okay, wonderful. What was that like?
Oh my gosh. I would share with you a picture of my 2-year-old that's gone viral, standing outside on the steps of the Supreme Court, holding up her little rally sign. And I reflected back on this yesterday that I was totally down there at the court in mom mode, right? I had on jeans, sneakers, right? Like very nondescript. And there were other high profile Black women that were dressed to the nines, right? This was a professional outing for them. And for me, I was out there, although I'm a political scientist, studies Black women and political elites, I was out there as mama. And I wanted my girls to see, to feel, to just be a part of history. And it felt like a family reunion where there were distant cousins that were giving hugs and people that you knew were family, but you didn't know quite how, that you just embraced. And there was a feeling of joy in the air because this is such an historic nomination that someone who looks like us, and particularly for my girls, literally looks like us, darker skin with natural hair, like me. Judge Brown Jackson has locks. This was just right something that I think my girls just felt at a palatable level. And to be honest, I felt too. So I'm putting a lot perhaps on my 4 and 2-year-old, but I have pictures and I hope that they will remember this, right, as I show them these pictures and talk about this as they continue to grow. So in their lifetime, they will say, right, I have a Black woman vice president. There's a Black woman Supreme Court justice. And the Black woman Supreme Court justice actually looks like me. And I think, just seeing yourself represented lets little girls and little boys know that you too can aspire to do this. Seeing someone in the position that you perhaps would like to be, or seeing someone in a position overcome all things that you have to overcome because you share a same social location and an identity inspires people. And that's true in political science literature that I cite, that I write about, that I read, that I teach my students. But it's so much different to teach this to my girls and to see this in my children.